Hi, amazing filmmakers, and welcome to this week's Filmmaker to Filmmaker. I almost didn't make it. No, I'm kidding. I kind of almost didn't. If I look a little tired today, it's because both my kids have a tummy bug. I had a really rough night. I mean, one kid with a tummy bug is bad, but two kids with a tummy bug, that's just like, that shouldn't be allowed. That should be illegal. It was brutal. It was a brutal night, but here I am. It's a new day. Thank goodness it's a new day. So without further ado, let's get into this week's Filmmaker to Filmmaker session. And today I have a really interesting question. I think it's an interesting question, which came up. I have a sort of rule of thumb. I have a sort of rule of thumb about what I answer questions about. You know, like which question do I choose? Because people send me questions all week. They write to me on Instagram or they send it through my webpage or whatever. And they ask questions about their path as a filmmaker or a screenwriter. And the way that I choose it, you know, I just sort of trust my instinct. I'm like, oh, that's an interesting thing. I'd like to talk about that. Sometimes as well, though, I get like the same question over and over. And weirdly, I got asked this question 4 times last week. Like 4 times, that's a lot. So this is for those people who asked me, who wrote to me to say, hey there, that they are writing a screenplay, but they're having trouble finishing it. Does this sound familiar to anybody? So I think it struck a chord with me anyway. I mean, besides the fact that 4 people wrote to me last week with that exact question, I went, okay, it's a sign. But also I was really thinking, you know, like definitely for me, the very first screenplay I wrote was, took me 3 years to finish it. So I relate, you know, it took me 3 years. I was in that place for a long time. Hi there, of thinking, you know, how do I finish this screenplay? So to these people who wrote to me and said, how do I get my screenplay finished? Do you have any advice? Like I'm blocked or I can't get it finished. Yes, I have lots of advice. The first thing that I'm going to say, and you will hear me talk about this a lot, but deadlines are your friend as an artist and a creative. If you're writing a spec script, and that is a script that is not commissioned, you're not writing for somebody, there are no deadlines, right? And so I really encourage you to create your own. Like, not having a deadline can seem like a blessing, and it is in some ways. The blessing is that you can take as long as you like to get it perfect. But someone said a screenplay is never really done. True, right? Actually, they say a screenplay, like I think they say about many things, but it's never finished, it's just abandoned. Which is even true of a film, I think, when you get into editing a movie. But deadlines are really your friend as an artist, you know, and I just go like, even if you don't have one coming from an external source, you should create your own. And so if you're having this problem, you're not finishing your screenplay, I urge you to create a deadline. There's 2 ways to do this. One is to pick a date. So you just say, okay, by June 1st, I will have finished my screenplay. And you hold yourself accountable. Like, whatever that looks for you, you hold yourself accountable. You're a grown-up, okay? So once you say it and commit to it and you put it in your calendar, I am going to finish by this date, you do it, right? Now, the other option is that rather than choosing a date in the future, you choose a minimum page count that you will do every day until it's done, okay? And so what that would look like is you say to yourself, I'm going to do 4 pages a day until my screenplay is finished. Or I'll do 4 pages a day, 5 days a week. Whatever it is that you want, right? And whatever is feasible for you. And then you just hold yourself accountable. And once you do that, like I always do that, I always have the 4-page count when I'm writing a draft. I feel like by saying that, like my thing is, you just get it done, right? It doesn't matter if it's bad. It doesn't matter if it's terrible. You get the pages done. That's what matters, okay? And if you're having the problem of finishing your screenplay, that is what matters. I say, don't worry about the quality of it. Don't worry about, you know, if it's good, bad, terrible, whatever. It does not matter. Your job is to finish, okay? Because until you have something finished, you have nothing. Once you have something finished, you have something to work on. And I say this over and over, but it's so important. Hey there, I see some friends joining in. Nice to see you. Basically this question though of like, if you're having the problem of not finishing your screenplay, someone's asking a question about their feature. I'll come to that in a second, okay? Ask me again if I haven't got to it. If you haven't finished your screenplay, if you're having trouble finishing your screenplay, I would ask yourself to look at like what's going on and say, is it a practical issue or is it a mindset issue? And I think everything about that is one or the other, okay? It's either, oh, somebody's just saying about the 7 plot method, and I will be mentioning something connected to that today. Thank you. It's nice to see you here. Hi. So it's either a practical issue that's stopping you from finishing your screenplay or it's mindset, okay? And you need to figure out which it is for you so you can find your way through it. Now, practical issues. There's 2 kinds of practical issues, I think, right? One is actually like about the craft of screenwriting, and one is about your life and not having time, okay? So let's go into the craft thing first. And I experienced this. My first screenplay took me 3 years to write. I know what this is like. Many of my issues were craft issues. Like I would get to a point where I think, I just don't know what happens next. I don't know how to resolve this story. I've wrote myself into a corner. I don't know how to do that, right? And so let's look at that. If you don't know where to go plot-wise, there's 2 things, well, there's actually 3 things that I recommend you do. The first thing that I recommend you do is that you go back to your outline. If you didn't outline the whole thing before, it's time to start doing it, right? And that's that thing of getting out the cards as well and just writing on the cards like the plot points and putting them up on a board, okay? So, you know, like definitely if you're having a struggle with the plot, think about doing that. Think about getting the cards out, write cards for where you've got to so far, and then write cards for the rest of the film, and really just plot it out. Now, if you really are just like, but I really am struggling with what the plot might be, something that I truly recommend is finding out what the classical archetype of your story is and having a look at what they did, okay? And this goes into that thing of like, basically, there's an idea that there's really only a limited number of plots. There's one man who wrote a book called The 7 Plots. I think is it by Christopher Booker? I hope so. I'll check it afterwards, and when I put this up on YouTube, I'll put it in the notes. But The 7 Plots, and really there aren't that many plots, right? And knowing what your plot is and then seeing what kind of story it is can help you immensely, okay? You know, refer to that. Now, when I was writing a script with John McTiernan, and John McTiernan was the director of movies like Die Hard and Predator and Hunt for Red October, I mean, amazing storyteller. And I was writing this script with him. We were actually doing a rewrite, but we were writing it from the ground up. And he said to me at the beginning, he said, this is a Frankenstein story. Go back and read Frankenstein. And actually the script was about a young man coming from Pakistan to America to do a terrible terrorist act, right? It was pretty dodgy originally. But, you know, like I remember reading that. So I read Frankenstein, and McTee would say to me almost every day, like, you know, what happens in Frankenstein at that point as we were working through it. And I really encourage you to think like this, like, you know, like what is the classical archetype for the story you're telling, and what did they do at different points? And it really can help a lot. Somebody here today was also mentioning the 7 plot points. And that is like, you know, this is when like cinematic, you know, like theory, screenplay structure can be helpful. I generally like to work from a place of more instinct. I feel like the sort of structural theory comes in after I have written the script rather than while I'm writing it, because I feel like if I put it in while I'm writing it, it's more formulaic. And I feel like if I wait till afterwards, there's a more chance for fluidity or something more organic. Somebody just wrote, how can you find collaborators to produce a film with when it seems like everyone else is busy? That's a good question. I'll probably save that one for another day. That could be another filmmaker to filmmaker, because that's a big question. But you know, you keep networking, you keep putting it out to find the people. You can put ads on Craigslist, on everything. You know, Mandy.com. You know, you have to just keep making offers of your work to find the people to work with. Okay, so let's go on with looking at the practical issues, the craft plot issues that you might be having. The third thing that I would say about this, so like outline, look at classical structure, refer to these and help those to fuel and figure out what you need to write next. The other thing is just write your way through it. And this goes back to the deadline thing, you know, creating a structure for yourself to say, I'm finishing by this time, and then saying, it doesn't matter if it's terrible. It doesn't matter, like I'm going to write a scene and it's going to be the bad version of the scene, right? Like say you have a situation, you've written yourself into a corner, your character is up a tree and you really don't know how to get them down. You know, you're like, I know how they have to get over there, but I don't know how to get them there. Just write the crappiest version ever, it doesn't matter. And just think of it as being a placeholder that you will come back to later and fix. You know, like I do that all the time. I'll always be writing in the first draft, like I write a scene all the time and I think this is the worst version of this scene ever, and it's okay, hey, because I know I can come back and fix it later. Okay, so I really, really encourage you to do that. So those are the sort of like craft questions. There's also in the practical, like the whole thing of I don't have time. That's why I'm not finishing it. I just don't have the time. And I've talked about this at length before. Look up my other YouTube video on it. This funny, somebody said, "Oh, first drafts are shit," and I think it's really true. You know, it's just the draft to get it down, to get the idea of what you're writing down, in my opinion, and then the work begins to hone it into something really, meticulous and perfect. So just thinking about that practical thing, if you don't have time, check out on YouTube my video, #filmmaker to filmmaker. There is a whole video about what's going on if you don't have time to write your screenplay. Spoiler alert, it's usually not about the time. Okay, so check that out if that's the issue. Now, this whole thing of not finishing my screenplay, now I think it's so weird, people write to me like, I don't know, I'm halfway through my screenplay, but I can't get it finished. So if it's those practical things, there's some clues, but it could be a mindset issue, and particularly if you're quite far in the screenplay and you're not getting it finished. And what I mean by mindset is the fears kick in, okay? And it's like you're afraid to finish, you know, because there might be different reasons, right? You're afraid to finish because you don't think it's any good. You're afraid to finish because it means you will have to let it go. You're afraid to finish because it means that you'll have to face trying to do something with it. You're afraid to finish, you know, I mean, there's so many versions of this, but it's fear, you know, and underlying it all, I think, is fear of rejection, right? We're afraid that we're going to finish it and it's not going to land the way that we wanted it to, right? So if you are one of these screenwriters who's thinking, you know, I can't get my screenplay finished, and you recognize that it is fear for you that's kicking in some way, that's sabotaging you and stopping you from finishing the screenplay, there's a number of things you can do, right? First of all, I think the first step is recognizing it, right? Once you see the fear and call it the fear and know what it is, you can kind of make friends with it and therefore transform it, you know? And I really encourage you to do that. If this is like hitting a spot for you at all and you think, yep, that's me, right? Or maybe this is something I need to explore, you know? And so then you know, journal on it. I'm a big proponent of journaling. I just go journal on it. Like, what is the worst thing that could happen? And just write down, what am I afraid of? Like, what am I afraid of? If I finish this screenplay, what am I afraid of? You know, write that down and then just write down everything you can think of that you're afraid of, right? Then go back and ask yourself, each line, is it true, right? Do I know this is true, right? And also think about ways that you could get around it. So if you say, okay, one of my fears is that nobody ever reads it, right? So now you write, you look at that line and you go, okay, my fear is that nobody will ever read this, right? And then you go, is this true? Why wouldn't anyone read it? Like, why would that not be the case? It wouldn't be the case because I don't give it to enough people, right? That I don't step up and really try to push it out in the world. But I control that, right? And what you will find with all your fears is there's an answer to all of them, and you control so much of it, you know? Like, say, you know, you're like, my fear is this movie will never get made, right? My fear, you know, like, why would you think, like, if you think that, like, is it really true? You don't know that that's true. It might get made, right? Like, you do not know that, right? The second thing to think about is, how can I, like, take action to make sure it does get made? And there's always things you can do. And so just, like, naming all your fears and recognize them, I think really, really helps. And then also creating for yourself sort of affirmations around them, you know? It's safe for me to finish my screenplay, right? You know, and just say that to yourself. It's safe for me to finish my screenplay. And it's like, okay, of course, as well, I think for a lot of us, like, maybe as we're getting through it, we're sort of going, this is shit, you know, my screenplay is crap. It's not what I thought. Because I always go, like, I think before we write something, we have this ideal of it in our mind. There's sort of like this perfect ideal form that we have in our mind, and then when we actually start committing it to the page, it's never as good as what we imagined. It's just never as good as that. And, you know, I just go, that's okay, that's part of the process. And something that's really important for you to do if you're going to be a screenwriter is commit to the process. And what that means is that you commit to understanding that, you know, it takes work to write a good screenplay. It's not something you just knock out, you know, in the first draft. You write a draft, you go back, you hone it, you go back and hone it, you get notes from other people, you hone it some more. It's a process, you know, and it's not an immediate one. And it's okay if the screenplay is terrible, your first draft. It doesn't matter because it's not done. It's not done until it's great. I'd just like to be clear about that. Your screenplay is not finished until it's fantastic, right? Until you're totally happy with it. So even if you've got to the end of it and you just feel like it's all rubbish, you haven't actually finished. You're going to keep rewriting. Yes, and somebody said, it's like a block of marble and the first draft is all lumpy and misshapen. You have to hammer it into a statue. And I say this all the time. It's really funny that that's the exact analogy that I always use. I go, your first draft is like, you know, if you imagine yourself like a sculptor. And I remember once in Brussels many years ago, there was a sculptor actually working on a marble sculpture in this courtyard over weeks, you know, and you go see him. And it started out just being a big block, and slowly he chiseled out, you know, this rough shape of a body. I mean, it took so long. And I just go like, you know, like don't expect perfection like from the first week of work, right? Like you can't expect this beautiful statue of a person to leap out of a block of marble in a week. It just doesn't happen. You take your time, you know, and you start with a rough form of it, and then you hone it and hone it and hone it and make it more and more beautiful, more and more perfect. But don't expect it all. And so this just goes into that thing of not finishing my screenplay. So for the 4 people who wrote to me this week saying that they were having difficulty finishing their screenplay, I hope this has helped. You know, I said to one of them, you know, I said that thing about like set a deadline. I said, tell me your deadline, you know. If you're one of the people that wrote to me saying, I can't finish, send me your deadline, okay? Just send it to me and I will like put it in my calendar and like hit you up on that day, all right? And that's the thing, like, you know, find accountability partners. Find people who you can say to them, I am going to finish my screenplay by this day or else, you know? I have one friend who actually like does that, and he puts a dollar amount. He says, like, I say to my friend, I'm going to do it by this date, otherwise I have to pay you $100, all right? Whatever works. Like, if that would cause you pain, do it, you know? Because, like, the avoidance of pain can be a big incentive for a lot of us. So I hope that helps those screenwriters. I know what it's like to, like, really procrastinate over writing a screenplay. As I say, my very first screenplay took me 3 years to write. Somebody saying I tell lots of people I'm writing a screenplay, so they'll keep asking me about it. Exactly. It's supposed to be bad in the first draft. Exactly. You know, I think it is really important to be accountable. Like if you keep it totally quiet, you know, and then it's that thing, it can just go on and on and on forever. Don't do it. I say I did it to myself. It took me 3 years to write that first screenplay. I had a lot of, my problems were both practical and mindset. And I always go like, any problem you're having with any of this stuff, always try and figure out, is this problem an issue of like, you know, information, of tools, of craft, or is it something that's going on in my mind and my attitude and my fears, right? You know, and that can really help just to figure out if it's one or the other, and then you can get clear and unblock yourself. But you know, it's not always easy. Do find accountability partners. And keep going, because once you finish it, you have something, you know, and so do finish your work. And on that note, I just want to say registration is still open for my screenwriting class. If you guys are at all interested, you should jump on in there. There's a bunch of people doing it, and it's just wonderful. I think the thing about the class, and I have one person doing it at the moment who is an accomplished filmmaker. She has had a movie at Sundance. That's where I actually met her. And she had a feature there, and she's made films, she's done it all, and she's there, you know, in the class. And the reason she is because it's holding her accountable and giving her the stuff that she needs. And I think often it's just like motivation to go, you can do that, like keep going, and here's what to focus on, and here's what might kick in at this point, and here's what's happening. Because I've done it many times, and I know all the doubts that come up, I know the fear, I know the shit that comes up for a lot of us, you know, when we're in the process. And so the class is really designed in a way to give you that boost, to give you that energy, and to keep you accountable until you finish. I just saw one of my students was in the Facebook group earlier today, and she was like, I did my 20 pages last week, which is like a freaking miracle. You know, and that's it. Like I hold people accountable. You have to do your 20 pages a week, you know, and that's how you get it done, you know, so whatever it takes. I also just recorded for that group a bonus session on selling your screenplay. I sent it to one of my students from the filmmaking course. He asked to see it. He heard me talking about it, and he was like, can I just see that bonus on selling your screenplay? And I was like, sure. So I sent it over to him, and oh my gosh, the email I got back from him was amazing. Because, you know, it's interesting. So many of us are good at writing the screenplays, but we are not good at selling them. We're not good at putting ourselves out there and doing what we have to do to get them out. You know, we think, I see people all the time, students of mine, they're like, they submit to, 3 competitions or something, they place reasonably well, they submit it to maybe 3 different places, get rejected, and then they're done. They're just like, okay, well, I'm done. And I'm like, are you crazy? Like, you haven't even begun. You haven't even begun. And if you have written something good, if you've actually, and you believe in it, and you believe that it would be a good movie, you owe it to yourself to actually get it out there. And that starts with actually even finishing it. Do you know what I mean? You owe it to yourself and to the world to create your work, to hold yourself accountable, to grow, to do the best thing you can, and then to offer it to the world, And this is not a selfish thing. Like, I just go, this is your gift. This is your gift that you're giving to the world, and it's the most generous thing. So honor yourself, get your screenplay finished. I hope that was helpful, and lovely to see so many of you here today, and hopefully I will see you soon. And as I said before, I'm probably I'm a little tired today because I have 2 little children, one who's 1 year old and one that's 7, and they both had tummy bugs last night, so it's been brutal around here. They're both asleep right now, but I'm gonna go check on my babies, and hopefully they are over it. I'm just praying for it. All right, guys, hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks for joining me. And to the screenwriters who wrote to me, finish your screenplays, all right? I look forward to hearing from you.